Hey guys, I just wanted to make a quick video here on trigonometry and just show the basics of how it all works. And what we're doing here related with sheet metal is just basic trigonometry. Trigonometry gets way harder, but all we need to know is basics with right triangles. So we're dealing with sine, cosine, and tangent, which is so TOA. One of the first things I do that help me remember how the equations work best is to write it like this: a large S O over H, then C with an A over H, and then a T with O over A. Now, the first letter is going to be the trigonomic function that you use, so the sine, cosine, tangent. These letters, the O is always going to represent opposite. H is always representing the hypotenuse of the triangle. And then A is the adjacent. So opposite is the opposite of the angle that you're working with, and A is adjacent to the angle you're working with. So if I make a triangle here, and it always has to be a right triangle with trigonometry. There always has to be one angle that's 90 degrees. So if you know, like some of the math we do, it'll have a triangle with two equal sides and a flat bottom, and then we have to split it in half to make two right triangles. And that's because these trigonomic functions have to work with the right 90 degree angle in there. So the longest side on the triangle is always going to be the hypotenuse. It's always H. And then depending on which angle you're dealing with, we're either going to be using this angle or this angle. So if I'm using this angle here, this is the angle, then this here is adjacent to that angle, right? So that's going to be the A. And then this is opposite of the angle, so the O, right? Now if I used this angle here, then this becomes adjacent to the angle, and this is opposite of the angle. Hopefully that makes sense. And trigonometry is always having two known pieces of information to find a third. So I'll show you on the next page here, and we'll actually do some samples together. I didn't pre-make anything, so hopefully all this works out together with this video. So if I have an angle and then I have the adjacent or the opposite, I can find the hypotenuse. Or if I have the angle and the hypotenuse, I could find the opposite or the adjacent just by using one of these trigonomic functions. Okay, so I made a couple of triangles here, so we'll do some examples. So let's say this is a 30 degree angle, and this is 28 inches, just out of nowhere. And let's say we're looking for the hypotenuse, right? So I'm gonna write the SOHCAHTOA on here again too. TOA. And then now using my calculator, that's something else you need to consider too. Depending on your calculator, sometimes you'll put the trigonomic function first, then the angle. Sometimes you need to put the angle, then the trigonomic function. So a good way to test this is to do tan 45. So if you go tan first, 45 equals, it should equal 1. If it equals error, then you have to do 45 tan, and then it'll equal 1. That's a great way to test your calculator. So my calculator here, if you have one of the sharp ones, it's the trigonomic function first, then the angle. I know with my iPhone, it's the opposite. I have to put the angle and then the trigonomic function. So that's important because you don't want to be doing these calculations wrong. If you're hitting the wrong button, sometimes it won't read an error. It'll just give you a number that's wrong, and sometimes the number's actually really close. So that's it's important to know how your calculator works with the trigonomic functions. Okay, so getting back to this equation here. So if I have this angle and I'm looking for the hypotenuse and I have the adjacent, so those are all the things I have. So I have adjacent and I'm looking for hypotenuse. So that one is this one, adjacent and hypotenuse. So that's going to be a cosine. All right. So if I go cosine 30 times 28 equals, I don't know if you guys can see that, 24.2487. Now I did this one wrong on purpose because that's what people will automatically do, is multiply first. Because if I was using tangent, let's say, if I was doing tan 30, I would definitely multiply to find an opposite. But on cosine, you actually are going to be dividing. So if you can see, my answer is 24.24. You should check your answer and make sure it relates properly to this triangle, because the hypotenuse is definitely going to be longer than the adjacent. So don't just take that answer as a right answer. That's actually a great way to see if you're doing it wrong. You know, there is going to be a short side, a long side, and then the longest side. So, and the hypotenuse is always the longest. So if any of your answers seem like they're not going to work for that triangle, you know you've done the equation wrong. So for this one here, using cosine, it's actually going to be 28 divided by cosine 30. And then I end up with the right answer, which is 32.3316. 32, I make that into close to 16th, minus 32 times 16, 5/16. So they are linear equations, so it's going to be either multiply or divide, because they work both ways. All of these are written as a division equation, right? Opposite divided by hypotenuse, adjacent divided by hypotenuse, opposite divided by adjacent. So a lot of the times you're multiplying to work the equation backwards. Sometimes you still need to divide. Let's change this up now. So this is going to be a 60-degree angle. And let's say I'm looking for the hypotenuse, or sorry, the opposite. And let's make this 16 inches here. So if I have 60 degrees here, I have the adjacent and I'm looking for opposite. So O and A, that's going to be a tan function. So this one you'll see I'll be actually multiplying. So it's going to be tan 60 times 16 to give me the opposite. So tan 60 times 16 equals 27 and 11/16. Right? So hopefully that makes sense, and that sounds right. If this is 16, that's going to be longer. Now I can check this too by doing a different trigonomic function, and I should end up with a hypotenuse that's longer than the opposite side. But I feel pretty confident with that one. It looks appropriate. Like I can actually test this out even by doing the equation wrong. So if I did tan 60, oops, do that again, tan 60 divided by 16, it gives me like a decimal number, so that's definitely the wrong way to do it. The other thing you gotta know with the calculators and doing trigonometry is sometimes you'll have to use the second function, and I'm sure you guys remember that from previous years. So anytime you have a given angle and a given side, you're just either multiplying or dividing. You're going to use the trigonomic function, the angle, multiply or divide. If you have two measurements and I'm looking for an angle, that's when the second function comes in. So I'm going to draw another triangle here. So let's use 26, 14, and I want to find this angle here. This is my question mark. So from where this angle is, this one is adjacent to it, this one is opposite to it. So again, that's going to be opposite and adjacent, so a tan function. So, and it's opposite divided by adjacent, right? T over O over A. So it's going to be 14 divided by 26. I'm going to put that in my calculator. 14 divided by 26 equals, and then I'm going to hit the second function, 10 equals, right? And then I get 28.3. 28 on 5/16. And again, it looks appropriate, right? The hypotenuse is the longest side. It's not ridiculously long. It matches how this triangle is. So trigonometry, once you get used to doing it, it's actually pretty simple. You know, the way I've done this, I think shows easy little tricks for figuring out your answer. So hopefully this video helps. I'm gonna try to find something else maybe on YouTube where someone explains it a little bit more scientific than I do. I know I stumble through this with lots of ums and stuff like that, but I think it makes pretty good sense. Anyway, if you guys have any questions, just give me an email or a phone call and I'll be happy to help.